Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar, where we're going to be talking about the value of veteran internships, specifically at Goldman Sachs. Just by way of introduction, my name is Lisa Jones. I'm a career consultant here at the Officers Association. I myself worked in financial services at a couple of investment banks after I left the Army. So in tonight's webinar, we're going to be talking about the Veterans Integration Program that Goldman Sachs have been running. And in advance of their networking evening on the 17th of October, the guys will be here to answer any questions that you have and to give you a bit of information about the program itself, the value of it, and also some information on timings and how to apply. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you now to both Guy and Charlie, who are going to be running the program. So Guy, it's over to you.
Hi, I'm Guy. I was in the Army for 4 years. I commissioned in 2011 into the Royal Dragoon Guards. I left in 2015 and came straight onto the Veterans Integration Program in February. I did a short internship and rolled straight into a permanent contract into private wealth management, where I was for 2.5 years, and I've literally last week have moved across into the asset management business, into the alternative investments team.
Fantastic, thank you, Guy. And we also have Charlie on the line from New York this evening, I understand.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm currently in New York visiting our headquarters office here just on the Hudson. It's a fabulous view. So Charlie Perkins, I served in the Army for 11 years. I commissioned in 2005 into the Royal Logistic Corps. I left the Army in January 2016 and rolled straight in the February to the Veterans Program. I joined the program knowing that I wanted to work specifically in HCM and Human Capital Management, or HR, and so only applied to that division for the internship. I worked with the Federation Business Partner team, so Goldman Sachs is split into two sort of distinct avenues: the Federation, which is the sort of supporting, and the revenue, which is sort of the front line. And I was working with the Federation Human Resources Business Partners, so partnering that part of the business. And then at the end of that internship, I was offered the opportunity to work in the employee relations team on a fixed-term basis, covering somebody who was going out on maternity leave. And I had prior experience in employee relations in the Army, so that was a good fit for me. And so I did that for a year, and then more recently, in April this year, I moved over to the Investment Management Division Business Partner team, and I now lead that in EMEA.
Fantastic, thank you, Charlie. So we've got two successful candidates from the integration program to talk to you this evening, which hopefully will be really interesting. What we're going to do first, though, is we're just going to ask you all a question which will come up onto your screen. The question is, what do you think might be the greatest benefit that you might take from an internship? The results that we have there are 65% of you felt that the greatest benefit would be a permanent job offer, 10% felt it would be a useful addition to your CV, and 26% felt that an extended network would be the greatest benefit. So guys, what do you think about those percentages, 65, 10 and 26?
It's kind of difficult because actually they're all pretty good things to come out of it. Now, obviously, first and foremost, you're only going to leave the Army and decide to do an internship if you're actually looking for a job. And so for me, that was probably the thing that weighed most on my mind of whether to accept this internship or to, I was actually fortunate enough to have another offer elsewhere, which was a permanent job. And I was very pleased to know that the conversion ratios from previous intakes were quite high, and also that for every internship place, there was a permanent role at the end of it, certainly for our intake. So I think that focus is quite high, and actually played a very big part in my decision to come here as opposed to elsewhere.
I would absolutely concur with Guy there. You know, at the end of the day, if you're coming onto an internship, you know, your aspiration is to secure a full-time role at the end of it, because it is, you know, an extended job interview in many ways. So, you know, certainly I suppose I speak for Guy and I when we say that was the greatest benefit to us. We both landed a permanent job offer and we're still here now. I suppose the other thing I would say is that it was an opportunity as well to sort of to get behind the doors of the industry. And, you know, I didn't have a great appreciation for the financial services industry when I joined the internship, or indeed like the more sort of corporate environment. So to have the opportunity to explore that, you know, during the internship was really, really valuable. And I think, you know, that just enables you to make the best decision, the most informed choice for you. That's also sort of an added benefit that I would certainly highlight.
Fantastic. So I don't know if there was anything else from the slide that's up now that you wanted to go through, but, you know, certainly a lot of benefits there to people applying, and they shouldn't have reservations.
Yeah, actually, just to highlight one of those points, and for anyone who I happen to meet for a coffee meeting or what have you, I always harp on about networking, and the networking opportunity by coming on a program like this, or, you know, any other, is that it's a very good way, as Charlie said, to have a look around the organization from the inside, but the real benefit is actually that you get to build that network. You get to meet people from all levels, all backgrounds, all seniorities, and learn from their experiences, get some of their key insights, and actually, by building that network, you put yourself in a very strong position, either for the role that you're interning for, or for perhaps a role that might be better suited to you within the bank. So for me, my number one thing is always networking, and I cannot stress that enough in terms of how much it's helped me.
Fantastic, thank you, Guy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to a second poll question. So really we're talking now about what might be your main concern in undertaking an internship. So we've got three options there for you to choose from, so perhaps just choose the one that you think is most relevant. So we've got 16% of you feeling that the perception of the lack of seniority as an intern might be a concern, 72% feeling that some insecurity around perhaps the possibility of a permanent role following the internship, and then 13% of you concerns around the pay. So 16, 72 and 13. So perhaps some thoughts on those concerns there.
I would say that, you know, I think it's probably quite natural for people who are leaving an organisation where they've built a reputation and built a career, you know, regardless of whether it's in the armed forces, you know, or another organisation, to go to a different firm and feel like, you know, they're not treated with the same sort of level of seniority. I would reassure people that actually I don't think that was much of a concern for most of us. The firm is very good because it has such a good veterans network. It's very good at interpreting people's CVs and understanding what level that they are at already. And I would say that, you know, when you're going in for your sort of, you know, your pitch for where you think you might land in terms of, you know, seniority, when you're in discussions for a full-time role, the firm is very good at making sure that your experience, it counts towards that decision, and it's not something that I would say should be a huge concern for you. There is an element of trust that you need to put into the organisation to make the right decision about where you should be based on your experience and skills, and invariably, I see them get it right.
I would say that on insecurity of transitioning into a permanent role, as we touched upon, I think it's the same this year, and I'll have to get Charlie to confirm. But you know, each division will highlight a space for an intern with a view to either extending the internship or having a permanent role either. So really it is yours to lose. It is an extended interview, and you should view it like that. Really, you've just got to back yourself. If it's somewhere that you want to be and somewhere that you enjoy being, then realistically you're going to put in the hard work and you're going to put in the effort to learn about your role, the organization, how you'll fit in, the culture, and providing there's a good fit, then there's no reason why that wouldn't transition into a permanent role. And not only that, but on previous internships, there have been examples where, you know, as the environment for hiring changes, where there might not have been a space in that team that you internshipped at the beginning, HCM were actually very good at finding the right spot elsewhere within the bank. But that's where it all comes back down to ensuring you've got that good network as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, both of you. So now perhaps an opportunity for you to give a bit more detail about your own experiences and share those with our audience.
So the internship, you know, is set up with the understanding that, you know, people haven't worked in the industry before, and so, you know, the great thing about it, I think we all sort of wax lyrical about the fact that we were given the opportunity to take time in the first couple of days of the internship to learn about financial markets and the core business of the bank, so that we at least had some foundation of what was going on, you know, the roles that people were doing, and that you then built on in your own particular area. And together, combined with that, was the opportunity to hear from some of the most senior people within the firm. You know, as an internship, you know, the veterans are very highly respected, and people will willingly afford their time, their precious time to you. And so we got the benefit of their insights, and it, you know, it really set you in good stead in terms of building upon that for the internship itself. And that sort of support also goes to sort of even before you come into the internship program. You'll be set up with mentors, both from HCM and from the veterans community on your way in. So you'll have a huge amount of opportunity to ask questions and understand what people's experiences have been like today. You know, what to expect from the sort of the very sort of like finer detail of, you know, what dress code, what's the dress code, to sort of the much higher level stuff. So it's you feel very much like the firm wraps its arms around you as a group, and, you know, you're really given the best possible chance to succeed here. And I think that's one of the sort of the best sort of adverts for the program.
And I would say, firstly, I realised that my introduction was probably short and didn't give you much on my experience and background. So I'll echo Charlie on the senior speaker series. You get some really good insight from some very senior and well-respected people across the bank, across all divisions. So as part of the internship, we essentially had a very good concentrated training package, and then we would spend the majority of the time on our desks, and each desk would be, depending on which division you were or which team you were, you'd have very different tasks, projects, responsibilities, etc. But most of them, I think, are geared towards setting you up to be able to do the job that you would hopefully be hired to do. When I was in PWM, and I was private wealth management, and I was there for up until last week for 2.5 years. What was my role? So I was basically a financial analyst, which is a support role for a team of private bankers. And what does that entail? Essentially, I was their right-hand man. I'd prep for any client meetings they had. I'd help find potential prospects for us to prospect with existing clients. I'd be the first port of call for any client query, sending out periodic reports, performance reports, trading for the clients, whether that was across equities, FX, fixed income, and also we got exposure to options and alternative assets such as private equity and hedge funds. And so it was a real cross-asset but generalist role, and we really were, I suppose, the problem solvers between client issues and the people that had the answers. The great thing about it was, as I said, it was cross-asset, so I could be a generalist across quite a wide range of various asset classes. But actually, the thing that was really great was the responsibility and the early client exposure. I think within the first week, I was already talking to clients, and when you're at a big international investment bank like this, the clients are both very high ranking, but also in the public eye a lot of the time. So it was quite humbling to be able to speak with them. As I progressed within my role, I was encouraged to do things like the CFA Level 1. I've also done other exams, which I was helped and encouraged to do, helped by giving time off, a bit of financial sponsorship, and that all helps with the ongoing learning and development, and actually also helped with my transition into a role where again, I'm on the client side, but I'm focusing very much on in a team that focuses on hedge funds and private equity and the alternative asset space. So what's great there is, after a certain amount of time and after I hopefully have proved myself, then you are given opportunities for mobility internally across the bank, whether it's across divisions completely or just within a slightly different team within the division you're in. So there's been lots of examples of that happening as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, both of you. We've had a few questions coming in, but I've got a feeling that some of them have already been answered, but also perhaps our next poll might help with that. There's been a lot of interest around what kind of preparation either you guys made prior to applying for the scheme, but also more generically what kind of qualifications and things like that. So what we'll do now is we'll just go to this third and final poll about what perhaps people perceive to be the best preparation for an internship. So we've got 54% of you thinking that research on the firm and division is perhaps the best preparation, 23% of you feeling that networking, and a further 23% industry training. So perhaps a few words on that would be useful.
You've already heard my spiel on networking. I think that's absolutely crucial. But actually, what I found very useful when I was going through the transition process was a multi-pronged approach. So you're attacking from loads of different angles. So how do you do that? Firstly, building knowledge. That's reading generalist books, newspapers, articles, etc., to gain knowledge of the industry, knowledge of the company, knowledge of the divisions within that company that you think you might want to join or you think that might be of interest to you. Secondly, it's networking. Now, by having lots of different coffees with lots of different people across different areas of both within an organization, but also different organizations across an industry, and actually different industries, then what that does is it gives you examples of where people share the same views and people have different views. And I found it very useful to be able to sort of pick from each of those coffee meetings to build answers to potential interview questions, such as why do you want to be here, why this organization, why this role, what motivates you, and you can draw from those coffee meetings to do that. And then something else I did was I worked out and I found this out through networking, but I worked out what the baseline qualification was. And I did that qualification, and for asset management, it was the investment management certificate. That both helped me because I met more people through that, so more networking. It helped me because actually that got me some work experience by doing that. And the team that hired me said that the reason I got the role over the other person was because I had that on my CV. I had a better, it really showed that I was really serious about working for the firm and working within the industry. And then the final thing I'd say as well is when you're doing that research and looking at where you think you want to go, you know, it's very easy to be drawn to what people would class as the sexy roles versus, you know, either what you're good at or what actually interests you. And, you know, there are actually a number of divisions that you might not necessarily think of as a military leaver, but that I think the internship would be very keen to have people interested in, such as technology, security, etc., etc. So.
I would just add to what Guy has already said. I think for me, I always equate the fact that I was successful in the internship to the fact that I really knew what it was that I wanted to do. I was very clear on the outset that I wanted to work in HR. I too qualified myself accordingly and undertook my CIPD qualification. And that really helped them because it sort of narrowed my search. And I appreciate that perhaps people might feel that they're in a position where they're not quite sure what it is that they want to do, specifically, you know, within a firm like Goldman Sachs. But I would strongly urge you to, you know, have some sense of it. And if you come into the internship saying, well, I'm happy to work everywhere, anywhere, then arguably, you know, you'll spend so much time just trying to work out what the best place is for you, or the firm will be trying to work out what the best place for you is. You know, the chances of that being successful are significantly slimmer than if you actually have some sense of it, what it is you want to do. So, you know, are you somebody who is very keen on, you know, investing, for example, and why is that, and what means that you would be a good person to undertake that role? Or are you somebody that would be better placed, you know, better sort of suited or more inclined towards the operations side and sort of more project management roles? Or compliance, are you somebody who likes sort of getting into the detail of understanding, you know, what's happened in transactions and making sure that they've, you know, followed the rules of the road? Similarly for internal audit, you know, there's so much opportunity and variety of roles here. I think one of the important things when you're researching the firm and the different divisions is to try and narrow in on what it is you think you would like to do. And that isn't just, you know, what do you think your skills and experience would be good for, because I'd argue there's such a wide range, but really what interests you, what flicks your switch. Because if you come here and you enjoy the work, you're more likely to be successful. So I would really encourage everybody to have a good sense of what it is they want to do if they apply to the internship.
If I can just add there's been a couple of questions that might be relevant here, so I'll perhaps bring them up now, if that's okay. One was directed to you, Charlie, when you said that you knew that you wanted to apply for a role in human capital management. What question was, did this limit your opportunities, or perhaps as you've just suggested, is it better to be more specific?
Yeah, I mean, as in all these things, it's a balance. I suppose, you know, one could argue that it did limit my opportunities because I wasn't very, you know, I didn't take much time to look elsewhere in the organisation. And I suppose in a role like HR, you know, you've got the luxury that most industries have some sort of HR function. So I wasn't necessarily honed in on financial services. I would say that, you know, if you have a clear sense of what it is that you want to do, then, you know, stick to it. You've done your research. If you've been diligent enough to do your research, to qualify yourself accordingly, then, you know, don't deviate from the plan simply because, you know, you're sort of tempted by the possibility of a role in something else. Equally, if you don't have that strong conviction, then, you know, I would encourage you to be sort of broad in the sense that, you know, speaking to the recruiters, and when you know, come along to the network evening and get a sense for, you know, what sorts of divisions sort of parallel each other in terms of skills and experience. So compliance and internal audit, for example, are probably two divisions that are quite twinned in sort of the skills and experience that people have. You know, equally, sort of operations and the technology side, sort of quite paired in the sense that it's very project management based, etc. And lots of sort of our veteran colleagues go into those sorts of roles. So I think you can still be focused without narrowing yourself, perhaps in quite the way that I did. But I felt that was the right decision for me and my personal situation, and it worked.
I'll just add to that, if I may, that when I got the email to say I'd been successful with my CV and that I was being called forward to interview, I think I was given two choices of operations and finance. Now, that's because I was a bit lazy and I didn't submit a cover letter to say where I actually wanted to be. So when I actually replied, I said that actually that's great, thank you so much, but I would really like to also be considered for the investment management division or another front office role, because I believe this is where my skills lie. And as a result, I then interviewed with the investment management division and subsequently got the role. So I echo Charlie in terms of know roughly where you want to go, and you can kind of equate that to when you went through your regimental selection, right? You sort of broke down the army between combat service support and combat service support, and then you worked out which regiments you wanted to go to, why you wanted to go there, whether it would be a culturally a good fit, etc. You met with some people, etc., etc. And it's very similar to this. The bank has different divisions. Each division has, as Charlie said, some similarities, some differences. Some are suited to different types of people. But make sure that if there is somewhere you want to go, then you definitely highlight that to HCM.
Okay, thanks. I'll just add a couple more questions onto this because I think they're we're in the right area here. Will the available roles in the different divisions be publicised prior to the to people applying, or so will people know what roles might be available, or will they just apply for a role that they feel that they would suit them based on their research?
So my experience with this, and I think we've got Geraldine on the line as well, so please do jump in, Geraldine, if I get this wrong, but generally people apply to the internship and a division versus a specific role. And as we go through the interview process and select candidates, then we're looking to sort of match them to certain teams and sort of find out whether or not there is headcount, because we are really clear that when somebody joins the internship program, it does mean that there is headcount opportunity in the team that they're going to be interning with at the outset, and things do change, but that is the intent, that at the outset there is headcount there for somebody to occupy on a permanent basis. And so it's perhaps not as clear as a lateral hire opportunity at the outset as to which roles specifically are open. It's more that as we go through the process, and we narrow down the sort of potential candidates, that we are then, at the same time having conversations with the business to understand who wants to tap into the veteran talent and who potentially is going to have headcount open for the program. So it's sort of a hybrid approach.
That's absolutely correct. It is very much based on the process that you've outlined, and we definitely, to Guy's point as well, where we can take into consideration, people's preferences, and then reach out to those business areas and see if there is a need, and if they want to tap into that talent. So that's right. Thanks, Charlie.
Super. Thank you. So perhaps now we'll move on to some specifics about the key dates that people need to bear in mind for, well, obviously there's both your event, but also for the actual applications themselves.
Sorry, it's Jordan. I can take this if you want. So in terms of the networking event, obviously we have our networking event that's taking place on the 17th. All of the information can be found on our careers website as well, so you can register your interest for the networking event. You'll receive details of that once you've expressed an interest. So that's taking place on the 17th. Our applications will be opening this weekend, so they'll open on the 5th, and they'll be open for an entire month until the 5th of November as well. So By all means, don't feel that you have to make an application before the networking event. If you just want to come along and see what it's about beforehand and then make an application after that, that's absolutely fine. Following on from that, we'll obviously have a look at all the applications. We will be doing first round interviews, which are actually via HireView, which is something I'm not sure if many of you would have had an opportunity to do this. It's actually the initial round will be done via sort of video interview. So you would receive a link, would obviously let you know if you've been successful. You would answer some preset questions and then send that back to us. We will be talking to that at the networking events as well, giving tips on how to sort of do a VC interview for a first round. And then again, we'll review all of those applications and bring people on site for final round interviews in December, and letting people know sort of next to sort of the end of December, hopefully before Christmas, whether they've been successful for the program as well. So that's a rough indication, but as I say, all of the information is also on our website, so you can have a look at that and reach out with any questions to the contact details that are there.
Thanks very much. We've had a question around the open day, which is that if someone is not available to attend the open day for any reason, will they be at a disadvantage because of this?
No, absolutely not. We appreciate that, some people are not based locally, they're not necessarily based in London, so it's not possible for them to attend. There's no disadvantage if you're unable. It's purely just for people to come along, hear a bit more about the program, but it won't have any effect on your application.
We've also had quite a specific question. I think that somebody has dialed in who is serving with the US military, but interested in an opportunity in London. Is this something that they should contact you separately about?
I would recommend reaching out to us separately. We do run a veterans program, in the US as well. Obviously, if specifically you're looking to be outside of the US, it's something that we can discuss. I know we have previously had international applications, so it's something that we could pick up, but probably best to do offline if you reach out to us directly.
And then finally, kind of a related question, which I think that you, Geraldine, are probably best placed to answer, is that if people are not able to apply for the program because they're perhaps leaving the military too late, are there any opportunities for lateral hires into Goldman Sachs for the veteran community, or is it exclusively via this program?
No, we do have lateral opportunities. So throughout the year, obviously, we have various jobs that are advertised on our website that people are more than welcome to apply for. Just to echo the earlier points that Charlie and Guy made around your networking, is it always helps if you do have somebody that can promote your application within the business. But we absolutely do accept applications laterally because, as we're well aware that not everybody can do the defined time periods that we have if they are in the military.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. I'm going to leave this slide up because there are obviously some key dates on there that people might want to make a note of. But obviously, a lot of this information will also be available on our website. But what I'm going to do now is go straight into some other questions, which have been coming in thick and fast. So obviously I've asked quite a few of them already, or some of them I feel have been answered by the guys during the slides that they've been talking about. But one for both Guy and Charlie is about the culture at Goldman Sachs. What do you feel sets it apart, both from other investment banks that you might have looked at when you were applying, but also the internship scheme itself, because obviously other banks offer similar schemes or other internship schemes. How do you feel that Goldman Sachs is different, and what sets it apart?
That is an absolute toughie, and definitely a very good interview question to prep for. But actually, I think so from my point of view, the culture, you've got a couple of things. You've got the professional side, and then you've also got the social side. And I'll start with the social side because it's my favourite part. Socially, it's absolutely brilliant. when you find yourself in a team that you get on with, and a floor that you fit into, then actually you'll tend to find that people are very there's always groups of people getting together, going out, being social, and so you're not just coming somewhere to work, but you're actually benefiting, dare I say it, making friends when you move here as well. Now, on a professional side, it's fantastic because you are so you're surrounded by people who are absolutely exceptional. They are from the top universities. They're the top in their fields generally, especially the more senior they get. And I equate this internship as to sort of climbing in through the back window of the back outhouse, and then sort of making my way through the back door into an organization such as this. It's phenomenal. There's a great culture of sort of everyone being involved with a lot of the decisions. A good culture of giving responsibility early, as I sort of touched upon earlier, and pushing people to be the best that they want to be. And so if you have that sort of hungry, roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty attitude, then this absolutely is the place.
I would say that the culture is different. Like, it's a different organization, and there are many similarities to the culture that you would have experienced in the armed forces, but it nevertheless has its differences. I absolutely echo what Guy says about the professionalism of the people and the sort of the caliber of them. It is quite extraordinary. We do recruit from an absolutely incredible talent pool, and it's a very consensus-driven organization, very collaborative. Not so much of the sort of same what I'm looking for. Sort of same sense of chain of command that you would have in the military. Ideas aren't sort of fleshed out at the top, sort of at the top, and then sent down to sort of through the levels to sort of build out the plan. Everyone's involved in the plan from the outset, and sometimes that's amazing and you feel like very involved and it's a very collaborative way of doing things. Sometimes it can be frustrating, and you kind of feel like you haven't got the commander's intent to work within. So there are definitely differences. I think the thing that I would say, one of the reasons that I enjoy working at the firm so much is because you always have the opportunity to learn. You always have you have a voice. You very, very clearly have a voice here. Everyone is listened to and heard, and that's from writing feedback on people. We have a 360 feedback system. So when you have your sort of annual reporting cycle, it's not just the people that you report into that are reviewing you. It's the people that report into you or work alongside you as well. In terms of sort of thinking of like the next idea, you have the opportunity to be very much part of that conversation. And equally, if you've got your own ideas, then there is absolutely a place for you to put them forward and own them and take them to and to progress them. So it is different from the military. I think distinctly different. And it is something of a change, but then if you wanted it to be the same, you would just stay in the military. So I find the culture very refreshing, and it makes for a great place to work at.
I'll just add one final thing on that. Is when I was looking, every institution I visited, I had this sort of preconception about what it was like inside, and I am very aware that Goldman will have a number of reputations depending on who you are, and I just want to reiterate, it is not the vampire squid that a lot of people make it out to be, and hopefully that is one of the things you will find both on the networking evening, but also if you're fortunate enough to get on the internship. That's the thing that really struck me, was just how the opposite to that sort of view it really was.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I think that's all really valuable stuff for everyone listening, so thank you for your honesty there. A question we've had about the interview process for the internship scheme. Are you able to perhaps give some brief information on what that might comprise? I mean, obviously we've seen that there'll be first round interviews and then final round on-site interviews, but in terms of will there be any kind of tasks involved, or will it be face-to-face interviews, or with panels, or with single people? Is any of that information available?
Sadly, Guy and I can't talk to an experience of the hire view process because neither of us did it. It was brand new last year, but I think the feedback that we've had from that is really positive, and it allows us to look at a greater number of candidates. So, you know, from a sort of recruiting perspective, it's immensely valuable to us. I think some people find it quite nerve-wracking, you know, to be sat in front of a screen and not interacting with somebody. But, you know, I would just say encourage people to, you know, to relax as much as possible, and try and, you know, use it as an opportunity to really convey like who you are and what you're about. And then the interview process, and Geraldine, do correct me if it's changed, but certainly from my experience, it was on site. I had a couple of interviews with people specifically in HCM, human capital management, face to face, and it's sort of the questions that I'm sure you've all been looking at as you've been preparing for transition. So if you get, you know, any sort of, you're thinking about like the career transition partnership workbook that you get given, and then there's a list of interview questions in there. A lot of them will come from that space, you know, tell us about a time when you were under pressure, et cetera, versus any sort of, you know, in-tray or task-based exercises.
I'll just add on that for me, both when I have been interviewed here and when I've interviewed other candidates, for me it's very much the thing that is in the forefront of my mind is, can I spend 12 hours a day with this person? And why do I say that is because actually I was surprised at how less technical the questions were compared to other places I had interviewed, and how much more it was a very relaxed conversation where it felt like they were very much genuinely trying to get to know me and to know my personality. Now, I'm not saying that you're not going to get any technical questions, and I'm not saying it's just going to be like a friendly chat, but it is certainly it kind of goes back to the culture. It feels like it's a much more personality-driven interview by the time you get to that stage.
Super, thanks very much. A couple more technical, if you like, questions about the scheme. One was, is it annual? So is it just run once a year, that there isn't more than one scheme per year? Secondly, are only people who are still serving allowed to apply? And finally, the application process, is it the norm to submit a covering letter? Apologies if that's too many, but I can obviously repeat them. So is it annual only, or is it, are you thinking of running it more than once a year? Do people still have to be serving, and are covering letters required?
Yeah, it is an annual process. Oh, sorry, Geraldine, you go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, it is, at this stage, it is only an annual program that we run. For this particular program, we actually need people to be available for full-time employment. Again, to the earlier point that, you know, the view is very much that we would like to offer somebody a full-time role. So unfortunately, it is very difficult for us if somebody is still sort of serving and unable to take a full-time offer at the end of the program, if that's the outcome. But it is run annually. Obviously, you can apply as and when you wish to do so, but it is only run once a year.
Super. And then just finally, about covering letters, or is it CV application only?
We always advise that if you want to put on a cover letter, absolutely, we do read through all of those, but we do also need that to be substantiated with a CV as well. Obviously, you know, if you have preferences or you've done some research into areas that you think you would be suited for, a covering letter is a good way to motivate your decision behind that. So we absolutely, you know, advise if you want to put one on that we will read through those.
Thank you. A couple more kind of slightly technical questions. Will there be any opportunities within information risk or cyber security within the organisation at this stage?
We absolutely are very interested in having people apply for those particular areas. It's very much something that we are focusing on this year. So if somebody does want to apply for that, we would be more than happy to receive their application.
Thank you. And also, final technical question about the application process. Is it advantageous in any way to be referred, or are all applications from military people looked at in the same way?
Obviously, if you do have an existing network, that is very helpful, but it doesn't give you necessarily any advantage to somebody who has applied directly and doesn't have any contacts within the business. We review every single application that we receive, and you are selected based on, the information that's provided to us, your suitability, what you have been doing, your skill set. So yes, it is helpful sometimes to have a network, but as I say, it doesn't give you necessarily any advantage to anybody else's application. Don't feel that you shouldn't apply because you don't know anybody. As I say, all applications are looked at.
That's great, thank you. And then I think we're just going to end on one final question to both Guy and Charlie. If you had your transition time again, is there anything specific that you would do, or anything that you would do differently to how you managed your transition and successfully got your roles at Goldman Sachs?
Well, so I had a 12-month period where I was transitioning, and I handed in my notice. I think over that period I had something along the lines of 91 coffee meetings with 86 people. I did 2 exams, 2 week work experience placements at other institutions, and then did lots of reading around. I think I probably would have tried to go on more coffees. I would have wanted to do more reading, and by that I mean I would have liked to have considered other areas as well as the one I ended up in, because whilst private wealth management is where I ended up, and actually was absolutely my first choice. Obviously I've transitioned since, and I think if I had a better understanding of the wider industry, then I could have maybe been a bit more focused at an earlier stage of where I wanted to go. But that's not to say I wasn't happy at all, because I really was.
Any thoughts from you, Charlie?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I look back and I was really pleased with what I managed to achieve in my transition. I was, I quite cunningly engineered a role for me in headquarters London district that was very HR focused, and so it almost formed part of my transition period. I set out to qualify myself. I suppose one of the things perhaps I did reflect on is I wish I had done my qualification much earlier than I did. But actually, in the end, it didn't make a material difference. I think one of the things that concerns me, nowadays, I think, certainly on the army side, I think the rules have changed slightly in terms of the amount of time that you can have consecutively to focus on your transition. I mean, I think whilst I had a job to do and I wanted to do it to the very best of my ability, I was in no doubt, and I left nobody else in any doubt, that my priority for my last year in the army was my transition. And I would just really encourage everybody to make sure that they are focused on the right thing, and that is their transition and the next chapter of their careers. The army or the armed forces will survive, no matter what you do. And so people might feel very conflicted at times. They might feel that they're being pulled in different directions by their chain of command. But, be steadfast in the fact that your priority and your focus must be on the future of your career and what you're doing next, versus ensuring that, that return is into the brigade headquarters on how much manpower is deployable. Focus on what's important to you now, and make sure that's your absolute priority, and then you'll put yourself in the best possible position. Those people that fell foul of that and perhaps were convinced by overzealous commanding officers to not give their transition the full focus that it deserved, invariably ended up just returning to the armed forces, and that was quite a sad thing. That's been quite a sad thing to witness. So take control of your own destiny is my advice.
I think that's great. Thank you very much, Charlie. And really, thank you both very much indeed, and to you, Geraldine, for your time this evening. I think it's been invaluable for people to hear your experiences, and I think the volume of questions we've had is really testament to that. So thank you very much for your time. And, really, people, the information is on the screen in front of you. If you can make the event on the 17th of October, I'm sure you'll learn a lot more than you have already this evening. But don't panic too much if you can't. But do try, as Guy said, to network as much as you can. And I wish you all good luck. So thank you very much, everyone. The information for applying to the event is on our website, so do have a look at that and put your applications in accordingly. So thank you again for everyone who's listened in tonight. I hope you found it useful, and do keep an eye on our website for upcoming events. But thank you very much to the team at Goldman Sachs tonight. Very much appreciated. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.